Hello everyone, welcome to Decentralized Future. I'm Doug, and with my co-host Furkan, we are on a mission to share and develop innovative technologies that are changing the world. Today we have a special guest, dYdX'a Foundation CEO, Monsieur Charles Ducy. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Doc. Super excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Charles, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. We are going to talk about so many exciting topics. We are going to start with centralized, decentralized exchanges. We are going to talk about your decision to move Cosmos-based blockchain. We are going to talk about CBDCs because we know that you have a lot of experience with CBDCs and stablecoins, of course. You have a great book, Blockconk. We are going to mention that book for sure. And then, of course, we are mostly Turkey-based. Our audience is Turkey-based, so we are going to talk a little bit about position of Turkey and other emerging countries and dYdX's grand vision. It's going to be an exciting show. We are looking forward to it. So without losing any further time, let's go.
Thanks for again joining to this podcast. So a lot going on in crypto market. Exchange requests default. Most recently, FTX went down, following with BlockFi. Down of Alameda Research is also there. You also mentioned in your book about Alameda, and you met SBF. We will talk about that as well. But we are seeing this transition from centralized organizations to more into DeFi and decentralized organizations. And you are standing with DeFi protocol, dYdX'a. What do you make of all these? How do you see this transition? How do you see things moving forward?
Absolutely. So I guess for me, past the emotion of the fiascos and the dramas from 3AC to BlockFi to Alameda and FTX, I'm trying to look at the big picture and eventually what's happening before our eyes over the past years and for the next upcoming years is essentially an upgrade of the internet. So a big part of our digital life is actually having an upgrade, the same way you upgrade your phone and you get more efficient software on your phone and more functionalities. And that's the revolution of Web3, essentially a new experience of the internet. And what I feel also, and this is valid anywhere in the world, is our societies are migrating from a bureaucratic age to an algorithm age. And I believe blockchain and DAOs, and we will probably touch on DAOs later on, are really the best tools for us to essentially make the best of this societal transition between being bureaucratic means you rely on very large organization organizing the internet for you or organizing life for you. This could be government, this could be very large enterprises, and more software is essentially at the center of a lot of our societies and a lot of our life. And this software is upgrading itself step by step, and more algorithm and essentially automation are coming towards us. So it's extremely energizing, and I think it's very positive to see that the internet is evolving and the internet is becoming a composability factory. And I think blockchain is really enabling that. But also when there is this kind of very big upgrade of such an important infrastructure that is the internet, there is experimentation, there is a lot of people coming in, and I think probably the FTX is an illustration of people with limited experience, possibly frauders. We have to let the time for the judge and law to really give us clarity. But I believe the more we're going to dig into these cases, the more we're going to realize that actually it's a human error or a series of human errors, and that's really something which makes me feeling sad, to be honest, because I know a lot of people are suffering from these dramas and fiascos. I think there is only one set of people, so to say, which have not suffered from the FTX fiasco. There is only one type of stakeholders in our space which got all their money back. And many people are waiting and hoping for the best and getting their money back from such financial games. But the reality is smart contracts, all of them got their money back. When FTX was going into DeFi marketplaces, when various players which are collapsing after the centralized finance series of events were going on DeFi to essentially borrow money and speculate further, they were delivering collaterals. And what we see in these massive shocks of crises, actually DeFi and smart contract have not disappointed anyone. They've been doing their job properly at scale, managing billions of value. And that's really a very strong testament, again, that actually the infrastructure that we are building, blockchain and decentralized finance, can resist very, very historical shocks on the system, and essentially being a trusted party when you kind of stay away from subjective intermediaries and getting more engaged with essentially mathematical or logical intermediaries, which are smart contracts. Yeah, I think it's a tough lesson for many of us in the space. It means for us that probably we have a few more months ahead of us for letting the industry to heal from such events, but it's also kind of highlighting the strength we have within this industry, and it gives us a good signal that we should be doubling down and keep building in this direction of essentially programmatic trust for our societies, should it be applied for decentralized finance or for some other topics. And it's really enabling us. So past the recovery period gives me a lot of optimism to see that the internet, the software, the developers all get approved before their eyes of the capabilities of our stack and how much it can impact positively when it's properly used.
Great, Charles. We directly jumped onto the topic because you need no introduction. Everybody knows you. But maybe it's a little important for people to know what your day-to-day is like in dYdX, because there's a misunderstanding. They think that you are running an exchange on daily basis, right? But you explained just us that how smart contracts are important, how it's changing the way that we don't need to trust third parties. So basically, as dYdX, how do you position yourself as dYdX Foundation? Actually, you position yourself as not the direct owner of the operation, and you make sure that it's decentralized, it's running even without your input, so that it protects people from these kind of problems. If you can talk a little bit about how all these things are structured, it's gonna shed a light on about all these issues, how they are safe when they use smart contract based decentralized exchanges instead of centralized exchanges. That would help a lot.
Absolutely. The dYdX Foundation was founded about a year ago, and the vision of the foundation is really to provide access and wider access to financial opportunities via decentralized finance. And the way we execute on this vision is through our mission, which is enabling the community and the ecosystem of the dYdX software suite to essentially keep building and striving and growing the capabilities of the software and making sure this software is maintained and grow in a very safe manner, as well as getting some education around the concept of DeFi so people get aware of its benefits and how to use it. But we are also very busy at the foundation together with the community to build the future version of the governance of the dYdX protocol. So we are building DAOs, essentially, a decentralized autonomous organization. And a DAO is essentially, you can think of something similar to possibly a limited company or maybe a cooperative or maybe an association. It's a way for humans to essentially coordinate their works and reach their goals using a digital platform that is a DAO. So we already launched Grants DAO. So the Grants DAO is essentially calling for participation from multiple stakeholders. Some of them are coming from Turkey, and they will essentially make proposal to the community on doing either building software or maybe organizing some educational content, for example. And the Grants DAO and the community will essentially allocate them some funding and follow up on delivering this kind of project. A few weeks ago, there was a vote which was happening on chain with the token holders and the stakeholders of the dYdX community, and we got the approval to build the Operation DAO. It's a decentralized autonomous organization sitting next to the Grants DAO. But this new kind of digital entity, so to say, will be focusing on the operation around the dYdX protocol. So there is multiple things you need to keep doing and maintaining, and we want to have this platform available for the community essentially to rally and coordinate all these works around the DAO. So a lot of the works we are doing are around coordinating and essentially connecting the people from the ecosystem so that the builders can build together and get a platform where they can exchange and take decisions together. And the same will happen for some of the people which are more involved in the governance, for example, designing the product or updating the rules of the product. So they've got this platform made available, and that's where they can converse and take decisions together.
I see that there are a lot of moving pieces here, and it requires a lot of knowledge and experience. And of course, like, you are in a unique position to contribute this the best. Maybe this is the part to make it a little bit personal for our audience. You are in the perfect position because you also have a great background with Consensys and also your work with the governments, etc. Let's maybe mention a little bit of personal background here also, like what you were doing before dYdX that came up to leveled up to all this way, that started your dYdX journey.
Some years ago, I was head of fintech with the Hong Kong government. So I was very instrumental together with my team at the Hong Kong government, together with the regulators of the Hong Kong government, the financial regulators of the Hong Kong government, to shape the fintech, the financial technology ecosystem in Hong Kong. And as you may know, Hong Kong is one of the leading international financial center. So there is a very active stock market, hundreds of banks, hundreds of insurance companies, 600 stockbrokers. So it's a very lively ecosystem, which we were on a mission to essentially enable and upgrade with software and with financial technologies. Should it be technologies for wealth management, technologies for payment, technologies such as blockchain, for example. After almost 3 years at the Hong Kong government, I joined Consensys. So I was working with Joseph Lubin as a co-founder of Ethereum and founder of Consensys, as well as all the team at Consensys, essentially grow our presence in Asia. So I was in charge of the teams in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, and Japan. And we've been doing a lot of works around the growth of MetaMask, which many of you probably know, one of the leading consumer wallets, working with Infura, which is a platform for connectivity to different networks, blockchain networks. And in this context, we work with a lot of governments and regulators and banks, building for them the early days of central bank digital currencies. So essentially, doing some educations, doing some first versions of central bank and domestic currencies living on blockchain. So we worked with the central banks of Australia, Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, obviously, Korea, Dubai, as well as the central banks of China. And a lot of experiments to essentially educate about the technology, design the right architectures, and understanding how a regulator, how a central banks could be leveraging the technology. So that was a very interesting place to be honest, as my day together with the team, obviously, might be starting with a conversation with the central banks on how to use blockchain for a CBDC, and right after lunch, following up on a large project with a DeFi protocol. So we had this opportunity to work on multiple topics and helping the governments to understand the benefit of blockchain. And it's a learning curve, right? Some people might come to the blockchain space with a lot of question marks at the beginning, and maybe associating the technology of blockchain with maybe the crypto finance, where actually you can think of blockchain as a technology, obviously. And then with time, education, and experiment, people start to leverage the technology. And today, to the best of my knowledge, there is close to 90%, maybe 100% of the central banks are experimenting on central bank digital currencies. It's really, I would say, a must-have for the future of any currency to remain legitimate in our digital societies. So yes, a lot of experience, which brought me at some point to join the dYdX Foundation, being super excited about the project, the ambitions, and assisting with the community, this leading decentralized exchange, evolving from being an application sitting on various layer one or layer two, and becoming an application chain, what we call a dApp chain. And as well, coming with that, essentially shaping together with the community some of the governance necessary for such ambitious project through some DAOs. So a lot of topics kind of converging around the project, and that's why all the people involved in dYdX and the dYdX community is so passionate about the project.
Wow, a great journey.
How did you decide on moving to Hong Kong? I read in your book that Hong Kong is a special place, like for crypto, blockchain, and Web3. It's maybe not Silicon Valley. You mentioned about that in the book. It's not Singapore. It's not Silicon Valley. If you're in crypto, you got to get to Hong Kong. So tell us about that and your decision to move to Hong Kong. Let's go with it.
Absolutely. So essentially, when I was young, I was traveling the world during summer while I was a student, and I find that Asia was really super attractive because there was so much activity, so much people, so much energy. Fast forward, I eventually started my career in China and then moved to Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has been really good with me. It allowed me to really touch on many topics and have, to a certain extent, a successful career also. So I was very, and I am still very grateful for the city. And I wanted to give back in a way, give back to the city of Hong Kong, give back to the many people I know in the crypto space also, which all of them pioneers also, which took bold decision to kind of test themselves through the adventure of crypto. And as you know, it's a roller coaster, so it's not easy every day. I wanted to document a little bit the ecosystem of Hong Kong because, as you discover through the book, it's extremely lively. It's an ecosystem of crypto which started back in 2012, 2013 with some of the Bitcoin miners from China using Hong Kong as a platform, and later on Ethereum. And there was this kind of deep blockchain culture out of Hong Kong. So through the book, I wanted to document the personal journey and the life journeys of these 21 blockchain entrepreneurs in Hong Kong. And I wanted to do it in a very casual format as well. So as you read through the book, it's essentially 21 interviews in 21 restaurants where we have breakfast together with the guests, and we cover a little bit their journey and why and how they came into the crypto industry. So there is multiple stories. Some people came as a dreamer and kind of very optimistic about the space, and sometimes have to learn their lessons on the way. Some other became extremely successful, and some of them billionaires, and built some really impressive businesses which became global very quickly. Some others are dreamer. Some others are former Bloomberg journalists who decided to start a crypto media. So a lot of different people, a little bit kind of a theater or maybe a zoo, as some people will say, of many different characters. So I find the crypto ecosystem and the crypto scene always very interesting because so many people come and join the space for so many different reasons. So there is always some interesting people to meet, and that's what I'm trying to document in the most humble manner for the ecosystem of Hong Kong. But if someone wants to do it in Turkey, the idea is open for forking, as we say as engineers. And I'm sure there is a lot of people to speak about in Turkey from the crypto space. So maybe you can think of also get inspired by this kind of template and way to document the ecosystem, and you should go for it then.
I like when I'm reading BlockConk, the name of the book, and I enjoyed that. And it's like it's very casual conversation, and like it's somewhere in the book, like when you're on a breakfast with SBF, Sam that guy. So with Sam, that criminal guy. So let's do a little gossip. So he mentions you about all this hyper frequency trading with Alameda. In that time, he was just founding FTX. He was already the co-founder of Alameda Research. They're doing this high frequency bets in derivatives. You are saying in there, I'm enjoying my croissant there, and like it's not my cup of coffee. Like this is too risky. Even then, you mentioned about this. How do you see SPF? Like, was he always a criminal? I understand that he was going for doing good, but failed immensely doing that. Like, give us a little bit insights about that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people might not be aware, but actually, FTX as an exchange started in Hong Kong, and it started small, as many things, right? So SBF was first a very active trader on BitMEX and some other venues, and then he realized in within Hong Kong there was a lot of activity and a lot of crypto players essentially operating from the city. It gave him the idea to start FTX. So in the context of this book, I got in touch with him through some connections. And I told SBF, for the book, the concept is you have to pick a restaurant and we go together for breakfast. And he told me, I don't do breakfast and I'm not leaving my office anyway, so why don't you come to my office? So that was a little bit of a break of rules for me, but I was like, okay, never mind, this can be interesting. So I brought some croissant and I went to his office on Monday morning, fairly early, probably 8 a.m. So we could get this 1 hour conversation and I could take my notes and prepare the interview. And he was alone in the office already at work. It was a great conversation, to be honest. I think it was, he had this experience in trading coming from his previous career at Jane Street. So that's why he was able to quickly build an exchange which was having a quick product market fit with the traders. So very sharp thinker, very great talker, obviously. And what he mentioned in the book is that he sometimes he feel like he was like a DJ, essentially kind of programming algorithm to trade on his behalf, and just only twisting a little bit the buttons here and there to make sure that things keep progressing the way he wanted. But definitely the type of trader which is thinking of infrastructure, thinking of algorithm, and with a professional background. The rest of the story is obviously very well covered in media and Twitter nowadays. But at the time, he was just an upcoming and a challenger in the space, and it was interesting to see how you can still make space next to giants at the time. At the time of the interview back in 2019, BitMEX was still the big leader in the futures and perpetuals trading space. And it was really kind of surprising to see someone being able to grow his business up to this size very quickly, when everyone was thinking that the market was kind of settled with these giants already in place. So it's a classic story of technologies, I guess. The same way maybe some initial social media were the go-to for everyone, and then the market expands a little bit, and there was more space for more people. But yes, it was a very interesting interview with him. He was moving from offices to offices because his team was growing, obviously, in Hong Kong, and eventually the regulation in Hong Kong became a little bit more complicated. The regulators more vocal as well, and they took the decision to leave Hong Kong. I forgot exactly when, but I guess it was back in 2020 or so, and moved to the Bahamas, and the rest is history, I guess.
Well, it's unfortunate that his trading strategies only worked in a bull market. The bear is here and it seems to be staying. Moving from SBF, actually, let's stay with your book for a little while, because your interview with Chris Marszalek from Crypto.com was also quite interesting. And one of the sentences he said was quite intriguing, that he said you have to solve problems for customers, period. And it's a very common saying, but it's widely ignored in the crypto space. So I want to ask you, like, from your point of view, what's the actual problem DeFi is solving, like dYdX'a or other DeFi protocols are solving for customers that traditional finance could not solve back in the day?
I guess DeFi solve one key issue is access. Giving access to financial opportunities, giving access to financial products, which otherwise will be not reaching so many people. And if you think of what you can find today in decentralized finance, should it be lending, should it be the decentralized exchanges, it's something which sounds very natural when you're already in the space. But for many people, if they go down their street to the local bank on their mobile phone with some basic payment applications, they don't get the same access to this kind of financial products and financial opportunities, essentially. So the big breakthrough is the same way internet has reached today billions of people in a very short time, and enable people to communicate to each other way faster and easier, exchange pictures, get a social life, possibly work remotely as well, thanks to the internet. Built on the top of this growth of the internet, there is a new kind of generation of finance built on blockchain called decentralized finance, or DeFi, which is reaching more and more people, thousands of people additional every day, with new opportunities. So they can process payment internationally via a stable coin, for example, at very low cost. They could potentially starting to experiment with exchanges and some lending, but essentially potentially bringing them a better life by giving them access. And we take sometime many things as a given, because you might be born in a lucky place in the world where there is a lot of this offering around you. But it's really groundbreaking for millions of people to get access to this kind of infrastructure, and it applies to so many different people. In more advanced countries, people will go for more advanced financial products. In some other maybe countries which are more at the beginning of their development, people will be just big beneficiaries of the technology to maybe send payments cross border to their family if they're working abroad, or anything to that extent. So really, DeFi is bringing access, and then when we think of the journey of the product of DeFi, there is this kind of curves, right? And there is the early adopters, and probably we are today on this podcast early adopters of crypto. But there is for the industry something very important to keep thinking, and I think really of two very important things here. The first time is regarding the DeFi products in general. We still have, and we need to be cognizant and self-aware of that. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of product design and user experience. Many people talk about this, but the custody is still a complex topic for many. I'm thinking a lot about the user interface, obviously, in decentralized finance, and something few people are talking about today, but I think is very important, is the jargon. The word we use in crypto products. If you take the time to pause a little bit and look at the software and the platform you use the most, you will sometimes feel we are using some very strange words. And it must be extremely strange for people joining our space to think I'm joining a new platform and I need to connect with my wallet. You're not supposed to connect with your wallet. Your wallet is supposed to be used only to keep your money and to pay for something. Or maybe you come to a platform which is trustless. So what does it mean, trustless? Does it mean you can trust them or you cannot trust them? Like there is no trust on this platform. So the words we use sometimes are very weird, honestly. And I think this is something we should rethinking and just look again at all the jargon we use in our industry and think for the newcomers how it could be. So that's the first point. Just thinking of the jargon and the words we use in our industry so that we can be more inclusive and less kind of a techie space. And the second aspect is probably linked to the fiascos of centralized finance we went through over the past months. It's about staying engaged with the regulators and demonstrate to the regulators and explain to the regulators that most probably blockchain and smart contracts will be their best friends in a few years. Because if you think about it, you can program in advance different rules on this smart contract. You can think that if someone has not proceed a KYC, it might not have access, for example, to a smart contract platform. You can think that maybe you will not get access to certain type of product if it's not suitable for you. You can also trace all the transactions in a very easy way on blockchains. So there is a period where the topics of crypto finance and crypto technology will be mixed, but we need to educate the regulators and we need to demonstrate, starting from what the regulators wants to achieve, which is protections of users, and demonstrate how our technology can essentially be possibly the perfect fit on many of the topics and many of the missions our regulators have for themselves and for their citizens, to make sure that they don't get their finger burned on toxic products or behaviors. So there is really, I think, a switch, and we should not be afraid to engage with regulators, and we should probably approach them asking them what do they want to achieve and what are their problems, and working with them and explaining to them how essentially DeFi can really be part of the solution of the many problems they have. And these early days of the industry and some mistakes made by some people should not be essentially mixed and blended with everyone. The best illustration of that is central banks are already starting to use blockchain technology for CBDCs, as we discussed a few minutes ago. There is already a great progress made in these directions. If you look at some regulators, the MAS from Singapore, together with the central banks of France and Switzerland, already have started to experience decentralized finance with essentially AMMs for their CBDCs. So all these spaces past the crisis will eventually merge, and it's a great time for anyone in the space to essentially engage with regulators and share their knowledge so that a better and safer space can be built. But to me, it's the history is written. We just have to be active in accelerating this kind of direction of travel and being the builders and the actors of our future.
Great. And actually, like, these are really unique selling points, and that's how the ecosystem is evolving. I'll pin on you with CBDCs. We will get back to that quickly. But I have one question regarding like how you see the value of DeFi and how actually the dYdX, the protocol that you contribute most, is evolving, because dYdX was a proud contributor to Ethereum layer 2 solutions, and actually it was part of the Starkware ecosystem. Now there is a decision of the protocol to move to a more Cosmos based blockchain for the dYdX version 4. Do you think also it's driven by these kind of unique selling points like access, for example, you mentioned as the most important one, or are there other motivations that's driving this decision?
If you hear from the builders of this platform and the engineering teams behind the dYdX protocol, you will quickly understand that they are kind of blockchain agnostic. They are what you can call possibly blockchain maxis. They have a very strong conviction on the future of this technology. They are building a leading platform which has a very great success for since 2017 when the protocol was born. But they really think of their users, they really think of their products and the experience, and don't want to be too much reliant on the progress of roadmaps of some adjacent products. And the reality is, if you look at layer ones, Ethereum, mainnet, and layer twos today, for the most part, they are what we call general purpose blockchain. So they are designed to with a number of trade-offs in order to be able to host a very large number of use cases. Should it be NFTs, smart contract execution, maybe data availability, and possibly DeFi or many other use cases. So you have a blockchain which is trying to be good for all. And if I echo what the developers are saying about the dYdX protocol, they wanted to essentially build a blockchain which is capable of being fine-tuned and adjusted specifically for the use case of trading without any trade-off, so that the performance, so that the user experience can be really optimized and keep servicing the users the best it can. So that's really the idea behind this kind of migration. Maybe the same way you would be starting your first website some years ago, hosting your website from your own computer at home, and later moving your website to another provider before moving eventually to the best technology available. So I think that's really what the developers wants to tell us is the product, the exchange, the services around it needs to find the best home for the best performance without having too much of a dogma or too much of kind of too close relationship to an underlying technology. So it's probably an illustration of being a blockchain maxis, but that's my personal opinion here.
So let's move on to stablecoins and CBDCs. We know that you led Consensys project on central bank digital currencies with Hong Kong Monetary Authority and Bank of Thailand. We can count you as an expert on this topic. So large banks launching their own stablecoin CBDCs. Probably soon they will start staking, and we will be able to getting interest from these CBDCs. Like also there are dramas in Facebook's Libra DM. Like how do you make of these? And also, like, what do you think about the future? And are they destined to be shadowed by private stablecoins?
That's a great question. You touch on Libra. I think Libra was really a wake up call for many central banks. The reality is, a few central banks before the Libra came to the world were already experimenting on blockchain, but on very different kind of topics, such as tokenization or maybe providing support for the supply chain industry using blockchain. And suddenly Libra came in, and what it meant for many of the central banks is essentially with the coverage and the mind share of company like Facebook, thinking of such a large company with a global reach having their own currency was really a wake-up call for many central banks on essentially accelerating their agenda on digitalization of their currencies. And that's really what accelerated a lot of initiative within, for the most part, every central banks around the world. So some of them started earlier than others. Hong Kong is one of them. And then the central banks, and that's what I was doing before, amongst many other things at Consensys, is helping the central banks to progress on the technology stack and the concept of CBDCs. So essentially, you have two types of CBDCs, and usually a central bank will start with what we call wholesale CBDCs. It's more or less a B2B CBDC, which will essentially sit between the central banks and the commercial bank to accelerate the transactions between these two parties. And later down their journey of CBDCs, usually central banks start to touch on retail CBDCs, so CBDCs you and me could be using. And then, depending on their choice of architecture, they will decide to involve the commercial banks into the CBDC distribution, or sometimes going direct. But for the most part, they involve the commercial banks to make sure that a lot of services and kind of risk management are made and managed by the commercial banks when the CBDC eventually reach the end users. So in terms of underlying blockchain technology, if you design a wholesale CBDC between the central banks and the commercial banks, it's fairly easy and straightforward because the number of stakeholders around this project is roughly below 100 different entities, right? As soon as you start building retail CBDCs, then it's definitely another game, another league, so to say, because you start to get requests for architectures and performance, which will eventually reach millions of transactions every day and millions of users. So that's when you start to think about private layer 2, you start to think about ZK technologies, and you really look at throughput and how you can essentially accommodate the kind of traffic you would expect from a retail CBDC. So the technology is progressing extremely well. I think eventually CBDCs will sit next to stablecoin. I think privately issued stablecoin and regulated issue stablecoins are making sense. It's very exciting, I think, for everyone and for all the users. We're gonna get different type of money surrounding us, probably with the same level of, we say, backup and kind of regulatory supervision. You might be able to choose different branded currencies for different use. So you might have a stable coin issued for and optimized for being used within e-commerce. Some other stablecoin might be issued and optimized for payment in shops and markets and retail in general. Maybe some other stablecoin will be perfectly designed for wholesale finance and maybe global interbank exchanges. So it's something which is being designed right now. But the good news is there is a competition in money also. So central banks have to make sure that their CBDC will be as legitimate and bringing as much value as stablecoin. So it's just helping everyone to kind of level up their game and making sure that we get delivered high quality money so that we can still strive with it.
In this podcast, we also think similar for stable coins. Stable coins, we can use them in e-commerce, buying stuff on Amazon. Like, you don't use gold to buy any t-shirt or any rice, right? So you don't do that. So stable coins for that has real value and a use case, most importantly. Transitioning from here, that was great. Transitioning from here, I want to stay a little bit around Facebook and Meta. They tried to launch Libra and DM, then they didn't. Then they closed Novi Wallet. Not a great look. They lost a lot of value in their shares, and they are betting huge on Metaverse. Do you think Meta will make it?
So far as they are progressing, it's obviously very complex. And the reality is when Meta does something, I'm not working over there, but it's not the same as launching a new project and starting with 100 users and hopefully growing to 50,000. For these kind of companies, they're starting with 2 billion users, which potentially can be using this new feature on their platform a few months later on. So they have to think twice before deploying software and products with such a massive kind of user base. But if you look in the news, they've been starting to release NFTs on different platforms of Meta. Will it be the metaverse as we see it sometimes with a world in 3D, or will it be some kind of intermediary step with NFTs being able to be minted out of your pictures, or maybe NFT marketplaces? There is probably a world in between the pure metaverse and the road to metaverse for very large organizations. And the reality, the end users are not totally ready. So sometimes the technology goes way faster than what the users can slowly digest. I guess it's more about pacing the growth and making sure that you get like the good product market fit on this kind of offering and letting the market digest this innovation. It's going so fast in the world of blockchain, as you know, and as you cover in your podcast with your multiple guests. Even ourselves as professionals in the space, we sometimes struggle to stay updated Just imagine the newcomers or the normal users busy with their own life. It's so we have to give some time and polishing the product so the experience and is way smoother, and possibly people start to use blockchain without knowing to all the details about the underlying technology. That would be probably the best world, where you can consume some blockchain based product without having to worry about wallet addresses, seed words, and all these things, because the user experience and the product have been evolving the right way and get much more easy to use, and therefore just a natural path for the new users.
Charles, it's an amazing conversation. We are getting to the end, but I can't close before asking a question about Turkey, as most of our audiences is from there. I know that dYdX Foundation has a small shop in Turkey. What's the position of Turkey and other emerging markets in dYdX Foundation's grand vision? Are there any specific plans on the roadmap for these regions?
We have community members in and ambassadors, community ambassadors in Turkey. It's one of these markets where there is a very young population, very energetic, very tech savvy, and where there is also macro events which kind of drive the attention to different possible alternative or complement to the existing offerings. So it's one of these markets where we see a lot of actions, a lot of traction, and from both the engineering side but also the user side. And I think I was in Turkey a few weeks ago for the Turkey Blockchain Week, and this week went so fast because there was so many events, so much energy, so many great people to meet. It was just a confirmation of what we see at the protocol level, is that Turkey is sitting at the right place. It's exposed to the energy of Asia, to the energy of Europe as well. It has a great and very energetic young population. I'm extremely bullish for Turkey, and we look forward to keep building with the community over there. I think you can follow dYdX Turkey Twitter account. There is always something happening there. We have like great engineers contributing, very creative persons. I remember some memes being built out of Turkey, and they were just mind blowing. So yes, great community, and I look forward to my next trip to Turkey soon again.
We met in this event, Istanbul Blockchain Week. It was great, right? And we have many friends in dYdX Turkey as well. Like we are reaching, like we are going over our time, but like I have still questions for you. So let's talk about them. Like in crypto, blockchain, Web3, it's scandals are never ending, right? In every corner, it comes something unexpected. It will solve in eventually, but where do you come the next scandal in Web3 crypto will come from?
To be honest, I don't look at the scandal. I look at the good news, and
Good
there is
news?
good news every week in crypto. There is new events, there is new companies and communities joining the space. So, as every kind of big technological expansion, there is all kind of stories. But I look at the bright side of things, and it keeps me awake and super energized. So as you know, the industry is a little bit going through cycles anyway, a little bit like seasons, so to say. So when the winter is there, you just get more clothes and do what you have to do in winter. And when spring and summer are coming back, you just make sure you make the best of the season with your friend and family. But for me, it's amazing to see how much the technology is progressing. I'm very impressed by, even though you've got events which can be a little bit coming with a negative tone, the mind share growth from the engineering side just never ever stop. If you get your eyes away from the price of assets and look at other metrics, or look at newcomers, new brands, new technologies, think of Starbucks joining the blockchain ecosystem, think of Nike joining the blockchain ecosystem, think of Facebook eventually pivoting their early experiment on blockchain and starting to offer NFTs for creators all over the platform. Look at the DeFi progress and engagement. The metrics are all green, and they keep growing and getting greener and greener despite a few bumps on the road. So that's really what I'm looking at.
Well, everything we talked about was quite exciting, and it's really a great future ahead for the Web3 blockchain ecosystem. But let's look at a little bit bigger picture with just a few words. Do you think, are there any other tech trends that are going to be changing the world for the better in the next 10 years other than Web3 DeFi?
I guess everyone talks about artificial intelligence, and that's that. I think that's already there around us, and it's just going to keep growing in importance. So that's what I was illustrating earlier in the day. Is we are moving from a bureaucratic era to an algorithm era, and algorithm will be all around us. So algorithms are in social media to decide what kind of pictures we should be looking and liking. It's on the video streaming platforms, kind of making proposal of movies and documents to look at. Obviously, algorithms are in the financial markets quite a bit. So it's all over us. And I think one of the kind of technology which will help us navigate and strive and make the best of it is really the blockchain technology and specifically the decentralized autonomous organization. They will come in many different shapes or form, and I'm sure DAOs will be different in 5 years and different again in 10 years. But they are exactly the kind of tools which will help us as humans to make the best of this new era and essentially keep focusing our talents and energy on the right thing. But that's, I think, even though you've got other technologies than Web3 coming up, I think Web3 will really help to kind of glue all of this together in a meaningful way and positive way.
I love what you're saying. And in Turkey, currently there is a conversation, and we are building electric luxury car called TOGG. We are launching it this following year, right, Furkan? In
I think so,
2023. Yeah, they made an agreement with Avalanche blockchain, with Avalabs, and they are creating smart contracts, blockchain solutions for the car, right? Smart cars. So you see that with Tesla. What you see with Tesla and all those data points, we will take it to blockchain, and it's so damn exciting. And like with this huge project, like building a car company from scratch and building its database and building its data written in blockchain, I think it's fascinating. If not anything.
There is multiple. What you're illustrating here is a great example of yet something else about the technology, about the talents of engineering in Turkey, which is bringing us to Web3, bringing us to blockchain, and using the technology in a very meaningful way. It's very encouraging, and it's bringing a lot of positive energy to see that engineers keep using the tool and here in Turkey using it for cars and for many other usage. So that's very very positive and encouraging.
I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, Monsieur Charles Ducey, and was with us, and we talk about a lot decentralized and centralized exchanges differences, why you're moving to Cosmos based blockchain for dYdX. We talk about dYdX plans, we talk about CBDCs, we talk about your book BlockConk, and also your plans for Turkey operations. For the last remarks, where can we find you? Where can our listeners find the book if they want to read it?
Sure. I think the best way to connect with us is via the dYdX Foundation website, dydx.foundation. There is also a dYdX Turkey Twitter account, which is extremely active. And you can find me also on Twitter and get all the links from there at Charles Dossi. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation, and thank you for having me today. That was great and a fun conversation.
It was a delightful conversation for us as well. Thanks for joining the show.
You can visit also Grants DAO, grants, dYdX.grants for any projects. Like you can upload there, and it's a DAO structure. And I see a few projects get grants in Turkey as well. That being said, thank you for your time. Thanks, Charles. We will be watching what you're building in dYdX.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time. Please subscribe. Bye bye.